start with the date, name, address.
Today's the 30th?
The 30th.
Okay, October 30th, 2010, 716 Mountain Meadows, and my name is Valerie Solheim.
And my name is Jesse Holmes.
Great, thank you. So how long have you lived at this location?
I've lived here 11 years.
And I've been here 40 years.
40 years. Oh, I missed that part. This was the family home?
This was a family home,
Yeah.
yes. And my brothers and sisters went different directions, and so I sort of ended up with it. In 1976 is when I built the studio, and that's when I probably did the most amount of work on the house and studio and property.
Okay.
Can I just mention one thing? It's not the family home, it was the cabin.
Okay.
The family lived in Boulder.
Oh,
and
yeah,
this
that's
was,
a good point.
This
yeah,
is called the cabin.
This was,
Okay.
it's always been the cabin. No, my folks had a very nice house in Boulder.
I see. Okay. So this was the getaway place.
Right.
Great. Nice to have that option. Okay, so have either of you ever been through a fire and or an evacuation before?
Yeah, I was in the '89 fire,
Was that the Black Tiger fire?
Black Tiger fire.
Yeah. Okay. And did you have to evacuate?
We were evacuated, and we went to my parents' house in Boulder with some neighbors. And after we were settled there, I decided to come back up. I had a motorcycle at that time. So I came up the back way, Poor Man Road, and came back to the house. And I'm glad I did, because the news was that Mountain Meadows had burned. And the phone lines were working, so I called down to the house and reported that everything was fine on Mountain Meadows. So everybody, well, all our neighbors that were at my parents' house were very much relieved. And so I watched the fire from the balcony here, and I've got some great pictures of the slurry bomb turning around. I could see the pilot. I've got pictures of the pilot.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was close.
And fortunately, the wind had turned. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening, and the wind had turned, and the slurry bomber started bombing right on Sugarloaf Road. And that, otherwise, if that hadn't happened, the fire definitely would have jumped the road and burned Mountain Meadows.
Yeah. Let's talk about this fire. And I know we kind of went over it, but let's talk about the actual evacuation. You know, how much time you were given, when you decided to leave, did you do any pre-packing? Did you, when you were deciding what to take, I mean, do you have a list that you worked from, or was it just a mental list, or, you know, did you have an evacuation plan in place like they tell you to do?
Well, the only evacuation plan that I had was I keep separate an accordion folder, you know, just something like this size, where I have the special papers in. And so I knew where that was, and I got that. But we saw the fire, well, the smoke at 11 o'clock in the morning, and discussed it briefly, and Jesse had determined that he wasn't going to be going, or that it probably, we would not be evacuated. I guess at that point that was a statement, you're not going to be evacuated. And I said, well, I was busy writing and couldn't go back to it. You know, all the electricity was off, and phones down, that sort of stuff. So I thought, well, I'll do something that we've always talked about doing. I got out our video camera and I walked around and I videoed everything and all. It was the first time I'd used a camera, so Jesse said it was all sorts of directions, but I just went through everything, and that helped me recall what we had, because I wasn't thinking, I was just doing it. And I talked to Jesse, what should we bring? And he goes, we're not going to be evacuated. So I thought about it. I thought, well, what would I bring? And so I thought my jewelry, and I don't like to shop. So it's so funny. I brought most of my summer clothes and one winter dress that I made a long time ago that I knew I'd never remake. And let's see, I brought Jesse's head, the sculpted head, the sculpted head in the bedroom. And I wasn't packing. These were just things that I was making a note of that I would bring. And I guess the phone wasn't out until about 2 actually, because people were calling, what's going on, and I called Liz, and my parents live in town, so I said, Liz, if you need a place to stay. She goes, I'm not worried about the place to stay. My horses, I've got to find a place for my horses. And I said, well, call me back if you need some help. All the neighbors, we were all just calling each other. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Who are you going to go with? Because there's some widows up here that are elderly, and so we were all just checking out and talking to each other, which I guess at that time I was trying to reassure people. I said, I called 911, we aren't going to be evacuated, it's okay, but we saw cars down on the road, they're all hauling out, the neighbors up the road, they were going out, and there were trucks and there was stuff, and I just walking around. And I did pick out what I'd take because I was doing this filming, and at 2 o'clock a neighbor showed up from Lost Angel, and she said, well, so what are we going to do? She thought I'd gotten the call, but I had been on the phone with a good friend of mine who just told me she had cancer. So I wasn't thinking about the fire anymore. And I just told her to kind of quiet down so I could talk to my friend, because I didn't want to cut her off when she was just telling me these things. And then she kept saying, this is so surreal, my friend did. And we're looking around, and she said, what are you going to do? And I go, well, nothing. She goes, well, and then she said, well, we've been told to evacuate. And I said, oh. And what was interesting is my mind went blank. I couldn't think of anything. I said, well, so what do we do? And she didn't have a place to go. So I said, well, meet me at Mom's house. She knows where that is. I said, I don't know when I'll be going, but you can go ahead and go down there. And I talked to Jesse, and he basically said, well, what would I take? Because I was going through my things. You want to tell about your part there, honey?
Well, after going through the '89 fire, by the way, I'm a sculptor. And I've got an unlimited amount of tools, and so I can't take them all. And so my decision was just to take, I have discs.
Grinding?
No, photo discs of all my sculptures. And those are valuable to me because a lot of these sculptures I'll never see, they've been sold, and that's my only record of them. So I've got 3 volumes of pictures. So I was going to take those, the computer itself, because it's still got information on it, and then my original birth certificate with my footprint on it, just in case I need to run for president. I'll have that. And that's it.
Well, that's when before we got the call, we went up to the beehives, and I wasn't worried about evacuating them because at that point it wasn't a question, but I was really worried about the smoke, because with smoke, they're going to leave. And I had already dressed up the hive area with bales of hay between all the hives for wind protection for the winter, and I needed to get the hay out. And did you help me?
No.
Oh, okay, I did it myself. I was just curious. Okay, I got the hay out, and then I soaked everything down in there, and I put some bee tea in the beehive so they could have something to drink, because I thought they might get thirsty. And I soaked the bales of hay down because I couldn't get them too far out because there was a lot and it was heavy. And that's what I did in preparation initially until they said it was time to go. And then it was like being on automatic pilot. I walked around and I took exactly what I had planned prior to that moment. And not one thing, well, only one thing more. I loaded up the car, let's see, my clothes, my jewelry. Oh yeah, I have a bathroom kit for traveling. So I took the cosmetic stuff, pajamas, and I have 3 computers, so I got my computers. I wasn't in a rush. I didn't leave just when they said to go. I was walking around, and we have 3 nice pieces of art, so I took those, paintings. And, we have a chest that's a wood chest about this big. It's like 1532, something like this, from Italy, that Jesse had inherited from a great uncle. And I thought, I have to say the truth, I thought, gosh, if we need money, we could at least sell this. I mean, that was the only thing I brought that wasn't intimate, that we didn't, I brought that. Never thought about food. Food didn't even cross my mind. I'm just thinking that now because other people had said they cleaned out their refrigerator. I didn't think about that. I got the dog, and I was getting the cat when Jesse said, what did you say?
I don't know.
I was putting the cat litter box into the car, and you said, Polo's not going with you.
Oh.
The dog is basically mine, and the cat is his. And Polo is staying. So, I got Polo stuff out. And then I remembered, and it's really odd, I suddenly remembered I hadn't taken any family pictures. Unfortunately, they're all in a drawer over here. So I came up and I got one of the drawers, got it into the car, and I came up to get another drawer, and it got, something lifted up in it, and I was pulling, and finally I thought, they're only going to get half their life, I guess. And I walked around for a while because the car wasn't full. But I looked at everything. I looked at stuff, and it didn't matter to me. Most of what Jesse and I have are inherited pieces. And I just didn't have any feeling for it. I didn't have any feeling for it at all. And it's funny because later that afternoon my sister called from Thailand and she goes, "Did you take grandmother's red rugs?" I said, "What?" It never even occurred to me. And I think that's it. That's all I took. I didn't fill the car up. And then I went down the canyon to...
Well, that's kind of the whole thing, is because my whole life is involved in this house. I built this house. So to lose it would be horrible. But there isn't one particular thing that I could take. So just there isn't just one thing. It's the whole thing.
Right.
It's the whole package.
You'd have to take the whole house.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, you'd also said that you were going to stay here, and if the fire did come down, he was going to, cut the trees down. And there's only one that's close to the house, really. That's one right over here. But he was going to take the trees down. And what was really funny is I was so worried about the trees. It's so silly. I was so worried about the trees. The whole time I was thinking, I hope he doesn't do this prematurely. I hope he doesn't cut the tree down. And I went down to the fire station because I know our son was a firefighter, and I worked down there as a volunteer. And so we were all just sitting there, just talking. And that's when things started to hit me, because a great loss to me would be the community. there are an awful lot of elderly people up here. And I'm saying elderly not to put them in a classification of friends, because we're all friends. I mean, we all work together, we're all part of the fire department. But I was thinking of them restarting their lives. That would be the concern there. And they were upset because the firemen were coming down from up here and saying so-and-so's house is lost, this is gone, we can't get in there. And they were just sitting there, and I was so sad for them about the idea of them rebuilding, or probably not, maybe having to break it. I don't know. I felt a huge loss around community. That's where I started feeling things. Otherwise, you were just looking, but that's where I started feeling about what would happen. And a lot of the elderly people there didn't want to come down. They said, nah, if we go down, we can't get back up, so we're not going to go down. And quite a few people stayed, and I reported Jesse. They said, because we have 2 cars, so they assumed Jesse went down before, because it was late. It was about 3:34. And I said, no, I want you to know he's up in the house. And there was some highway patrol there then. And what was cool, I found that was really cool, because the phone lines had gone out. And so the highway patrol, or county, they were going down the road, and they're going house to house.
Don't give highway patrol any credit. It's the sheriff department.
Okay, the sheriff department, honey. The sheriff department. Well, I don't know who they were. They were going house to house.
There should be a distinction.
Okay. They were going house to house to make sure people were out, and I told them, I was just driving out, and they were going by, and they were going thumbs up to me. And I told them, oh no, but my husband's there. And he goes, well, and I said, don't talk to him. I said, he's not going. He'll go when he's ready, but don't even bother. And
they can't force you to leave your house. They say it's mandatory, but they cannot force you to leave. And also, because of the '89 fire, this house is constructed, the way it's constructed, it's stucco on the outside. It's got a concrete tile on the roof. It is very well, it's easily defendable. Not easily defendable, but it is defendable. So it's, there was a good reason for me to stay.
Well, and also, you mentioned all the mitigation about 3 years ago.
We have done fire mitigation, yes.
And intentionally, there is a lawn, which some people around here thought was a little bit bourgeois to have a lawn, but the intention was to be watering it and to have keep the area damp. And actually, turns out to be, that's a recommended thing to do. The house is, again, fortunately built into the side of the hill, so that keeps the house cool. When the Black Tiger fire burned, a few of the houses were saved that were built into the hill. And because they stayed cool, so they didn't naturally combust because of the heat. And you want to tell them about your visit from Montana?
Yeah, it was about 2 days after the fire, or the fire was still continuing. But our insurance company is with Mutual Liberty, and there were 2 firefighters from Montana that were hired by Liberty Mutual to come and check on the house. And they didn't expect us for anyone to be here, but I was here. And so we were talking about the fire, and he also noticed that this area had several forest fires beforehand. But we were talking about the house, and he said, yes, this was a defendable house because of the stucco and the concrete tile roof and the way the area around the house is managed, that it would have been a defendable house.
Yay, so
yeah.
You guys did it right.
Yeah, and just to have his, and he said, by the way, that he would have stayed too.
Yeah. Good for you.
And I wasn't the only one who stayed up here, because at night you could hear generators going, which meant there were other people staying.
What was it like up here at night without a generator?
Oh, I had a generator.
Oh, you did too. Okay, so you had lights and
So I had lights and television.
Yeah.
And a little radio that I carry around everywhere. So.
great, great. So you finally did get in the car. And
Yeah,
come
it was.
down?
The fire started on Monday, and then Thursday afternoon, I thought that probably by Friday they'd be letting people come back up. So I went down to see Valerie on Thursday afternoon, and I was right. They did start letting people up on Friday.
Okay. So.
And I ran out of gas for the generator.
Oh, the truth comes out.
And out of milk, which has got to have milk for his coffee. There are a few things, no shower.
That's funny. So, when you both got into your cars, was there anything that you knew you were probably coming back, but when you got in the car, was there anything that you said, oh, I should have taken that with me?
I thought of one thing that turned out that I'd recommend people to have in their little travel case. And I called Quest because I kept trying to call Jesse up here, and Quest would not help me because I did not have our invoice, your membership number, your account number. They wouldn't help me. And I was talking, I know, to someone probably in India, and I said, would you let me talk to your manager? No, ma'am, no manager. You talking to me, ma'am. And I said, look, there's a fire going on here. I explained things, and no, ma'am, can't help you because I just wanted, I said, I just want the telephone messages switched to this house. No, ma'am, because you don't have your number. But I couldn't, I said, do you understand how serious this is? Do you understand what's going on up here? And it was, but he had his rules. Yeah. And so I guess you should have in there a list of your probably water, electricity, telephone. But in terms of personal items, not one thing.
How about you, Jesse?
No, all that stuff can be replaced. Records to your car can be replaced. Insurance numbers can be replaced. I had a friend whose barn burned down, and his office was in his barn, and all his records were there. He was able to replace all that stuff. I mean, it's inconvenient, but it's all replaceable.
Great, thank you. I think we talked a little bit about this, but forgive me if I'm repeating the question. When you were getting ready to go, and I guess that's Valerie, can you describe your mood?
Blank. I wasn't afraid.
Can we go back?
Okay. My mood was blank. I wasn't thinking anything. I guess it was, is this real? I wasn't panicked. I wasn't afraid. It was only talking to my friends and neighbors at the fire department that it started the bigness of it. And a lot of them had also gone through the Black Tiger. And so they were pretty emotional. They were hurting. They were hurting. And they had more information because they had already known that it had jumped from Fourmile. It had gone over to Mountain King. And so a lot of the people that I was sitting with were from that area. And the fire engines were coming back and I guess refueling and going back up. And so they were telling us at the time, we were getting these updates. And again, some of them were wrong. I mean, some said some houses burned that maybe they thought were going to burn, but ended up not burning. And so, and then being in town is like not being able to, be a sit down. You couldn't. The television didn't really help because all the speculation was awful. The speculation was awful, but at the same time, you didn't want to leave the television. You didn't want to leave it, So, one thing that I didn't care for at all is the phone. I had my cell phone with me. It did not stop ringing. Everybody was calling, and not only call once, they called several times the whole time, and you just didn't want to. You just didn't want to talk about it. You didn't want to go through it. You were thinking, your mind was up here and my mind was thinking about Jesse, and I did not appreciate those calls. I knew the people I had to call, Mom, everything's okay. And it just was, that was unpleasant. That piece I didn't like at all.
Okay. Jesse, you seem like the master of calm. Were you feeling like the master of calm through all this?
When the fire started, the wind was blowing to the north. And I thought that if I started seeing flames or smoke coming south towards the house, then I knew I was probably going to be in trouble. But at that time, all the wind was going north. So I felt pretty secure.
The whole time?
Yeah. I was aware of some wind changes, and at the time I didn't know that it had come so close at Mountain King, but I didn't know that at the time.
And
so
that would have made you nervous?
Yeah, I wouldn't have left, but it would have been good information to know.
It got closer to Mountain King. The arroyo, or what is it in English? The gulch that comes down by Jesse's studio, up at the top of it, which isn't too far away, the fire had jumped into that. And they managed to put that out. And then there's a road that goes around back here, and the fire came down probably about 2/3 of the road and burnt on the road, and that's where it jumped. So it was far closer than you imagined, or we did at the time.
I just have one question left, and I guess I'll just ask it. Do you feel like the experience has changed you?
No. I mean, it's having gone through the '89 fire and then this fire, and now having this Boulder Canyon fire, it's becoming part of life.
Yeah, life in the mountains, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
I talked to, right after the fire we were talking, and the most comments I got from my girlfriends I talked to is they said, we have too much junk. We just have too much junk. And so they were assessing their lives in terms of, I can't believe all the stuff we have. And in terms of changing, one thing I really love is the community feeling. And in hearing different people's stories, how they helped each other in ways that were just amazing. Endangering themselves, especially around horses. That's the biggest thing. People who had trailers and people who didn't have trailers and people who didn't even know people were coming up the mountain with trailers. And I heard instances where this was the highway patrol saying, you cannot go past this barrier. And she said, stop me. And she had, an empty trailer, and she was coming up to help friends get their horses. Also, we both went to our first fire meeting together. They were doing an assessment. And, this part was really touching. Miles is our fire chief. And Miles first got up there, and he was about ready to cry, saying, I've got to say, we failed you. And we were all kind of going, huh? And he said, we lost 19 houses. And he was just broken up about losing 19 houses. He was really crushed, and we were all clapping and applauding and this sort of stuff. It was so warm. And they asked, I volunteer for the garage sale. That's a week-long project of setting up and taking down and selling and all this sort of stuff. It's pretty intense. And then helping out at the Christmas party. But I signed up to do more volunteer work because I love those guys. I absolutely love those guys. I asked them, you think we have a fairly large community, there'd be quite a few volunteer firemen. There were 20, and they took care of us. They took care of us. I mean, they were saying that on a truck, there would be two to a truck, and yet they were out there backing up. I mean, one of them's a good friend of mine, Kitty, and she said, no, we were backing the trucks right up into the fire. You check for your exit, how to get out. And she was saying that it was extraordinary, but in terms of changing my life, is community. Just being more involved with the people. And I love it because it really transcends all political boundaries, because that's a major thing, you know. And I love it because it's not a group, it's not a clique, you just get to know all these different kinds of people that previously when I lived in town you didn't get to know, because you stayed with, you know, your little thing, and you made a lot of judgments about people that don't hold. They just don't hold. And it's so funny. It's just a very warm feeling and a great feeling of community up here.
Okay, thank you. I'm finished with my questions. Did you hear anything? Anything we need to redo? Okay. What I think we'd like to do now maybe is get some footage of some of those things that you threw in your car. But before we do anything, can you just get a shot of the dog? Because the dog got to...
They said, we want to give you free eye exam, lens, glasses. You can choose anything from $250 and down. And they were so helpful and so kind, but everybody was. Everybody was just that way. And it was so moving. I mean, I was crying all the time because people were so kind, the kindness, and that the learning to receive was a big issue. To say, yes, thank you. You know, and the kindness was extraordinary. The restaurants with their food. And it's funny because we did go out to eat because we couldn't think of food. We couldn't think of cooking. We couldn't think of shopping. And so we said, well, some restaurants are open for us down there. So we went down there thinking something minor, but there was nothing minor about what they gave us. I mean, full meals. And we all went to the kitchen one night, you know, a group of us from the mountains, and they served us as if we were royalty, and we didn't look like royalty. We were all kind of dirty in the same clothes and things. They were so good and so caring. And I wish I could name all of them, but and the coffee. I went over to, what is the coffee one? Spruce Confectionery. They had coffee out, and we didn't have electricity. So I took a thermos down. I know they were only giving cups of coffee, and I took a thermos and I said, could you just fill it for half? Because I wanted to bring it up. Jessie didn't want to go down. And they just filled it right up, and they got this, do you have that, and do you have this, and you gave pastries. And I said, no, that's okay, that's okay. And it was a lesson in receiving. That was a concern, because the first thing was, no, please don't, please, I just want this much. And just to say, yes, I really could use the whole thermos full. It was a lesson in receiving that was wonderful.
Making me cry.
Oh, me too. I'm a wreck.
Well, I'm trying to hold myself back here, because I really, and meeting our friends on the streets and saying, well, I guess we can eat here. And I don't want to go into it anymore. It was too wonderful. And I'll have to say another thing, that when people were angry about the Boulder people coming up and looking around, that made me sad, because maybe these people that were angry had always lived in the mountains or something. But Boulder, growing up here, the mountains are Boulder. Right. The mountains are Boulder. So this belongs to all of us. The identity belongs to all of us. They saw the footage. They were watching the television. They were in shock. They have friends up here. And the response was, stay out of here. Don't come looking. Oh, I felt very different. And my house didn't burn down. Okay, so that's true. But I just felt so connected with the town. And, I wanted them up here to look around. It was part of their heritage, too.
Yeah,
Somebody walking, you'd be walking down the road, and all of a sudden you'd just be hugging each other and crying. It was just hugging and crying, and sitting with people that you didn't know that close as a neighbor, and getting very close, and just a lot. And for the first maybe even 2 weeks up here, it was just, I think it was the whole feeling and what was going on, very disorienting, very unfocused, not really knowing what to do here, doing a little this, doing a little that, being exhausted, a lot of exhaustion, you couldn't figure out, I slept well last night, but I'm exhausted today.
I was only gone for 8 hours, so I was coming back home. I wasn't going through the same emotions that you were.
Jesse's connected here because he's always lived here, but maybe that's just that female thing with all the neighbors and stuff, and it was exhausting, but so wonderful to see people and be hugging everybody and crying, and, it was just really great.
Yeah. You can put it up.
So I did save this piece. Is that?
Oh, it's smashing.
Right.
And I'll show you the one winter, took a long time to make,
Show it to the camera.
and I just did all the beading. And I wanted one dress with all the bells and whistles.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Can you turn it around?
yeah, and so I just,
Wow, that's gorgeous.
at night I would just do this. It was kind of like
A project.
something to do. And I put so many bells and whistles on, I can't wear it. Where do you wear it to? And I did it out of flannel because I thought I'd just be wearing it around the house.
It just got fancier and fancier.
It did.
It's gorgeous. Great. Okay.
And here's the information on it. And inside are postcards that his great aunt and uncle sent from all over the world where they traveled.
Oh, how fun.
Oh, how wonderful.
So those went to.
This I took. This is, I think, the only.
Just the one you thought you could sell?
Well, I thought. This here is one I took, and this is an original by a friend of mine in Switzerland who's a well-known artist, Sergei Summers. And Sergei came to the house when I was living in California, and he just did it, just like this. It's funny, the bowl there is from Norway, so it's probably about 1900s.
Back up there.
Okay, and
This is the person.
Do you need cobbles or?
No.
Oh, that's right.
Great.
Okay. And I don't know if she still wants to see the 3 volumes of photos, but here they are.
I think I just do it over your shoulder, like from
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
You wanna flip because I cannot see exactly what it is. Okay, there we go. Cool. That's plenty.
Okay.
This studio is nicer than the one they have at CU Boulder, I guess. Or at least the one they used to have.
What's that?
Your studio, the ceramic studio, the sculpture studio.
Oh.
This is nicer.
Well, yeah, the whole thing is designed, carved marble, and I don't even know if anyone carves marble at CU.
Yeah, probably. That's why.